The Minnesota Twins are better. A Cleveland area legend has passed away. And we got some prospect chatter and a Guards Fest, all on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Ellis. I'm one of the two hosts of Locked On Guardians. And I know you're all expecting me to reach over and pat myself on the back for successfully predicting the Twins trade. But we'll save that for segment 3, prospects in segment 2. Before I have Justin introduce himself, as he got to do some media things this past weekend, I want to take a moment and talk about Sal Bando, who passed away from cancer. For those who don't know, Sal Bando, I already forgot the high school, Warrensville Heights. His brother Chris went to Solon. Chris was a second-round pick of the Guardians, like a 10 or maybe 12-year age gap between them. Chris was a second rounder, so we know what that means. It didn't go great. The eternal curse of the Guardians in the second round. Chris Bando was voted for the 70s catcher for the College World Series, like the all-time 70s team. He was that good at Arizona State. His brother Sal, 60 career WAR for him. He's in the Northeastern Ohio Sports Hall of Fame for good reason. He had a fantastic career. One of those guys who, when you look at WAR, 60 WAR is like up there with a lot of Hall of Famers. He wasn't like a black ink guy or gray ink guy or any of that stuff, but he was just good. He was a very good third baseman for a long time. So I thought we'd had to take a moment and talk about Sal Bando, take a dig at his brother. Hey, listen, Chris getting to the big leagues and playing as long as he did probably makes him a top 5 second round pick for this team. The Bandos had 2. It's been a while. We'll save the stats for tomorrow on Cleveland has not had a lot of Clevelanders play for them. And there's only 6 Clevelanders in baseball this past year. Why don't you leave your thoughts in the comments below, and then we'll discuss it on tomorrow's show. So that is don't cheat. Don't look it up. I put it out on Twitter as well, so you could go look. But that's kind of the lead off. And I forgot to say, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel/Locked On today to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen. I just want to talk Sal Bando. He's fascinating, and it's always good to see like a Northeast Ohio baseball player. We don't have enough of those. But things were happening this weekend in Northeast Ohio, and Justin is part of our news, so he can tell you all about who he is and talk about GuardsFest.
Yeah, I have not predicted anything successful in ever, so never want to take any of my my first foray into FanDuel. This weekend was not fantastic, so you don't want to take anything I say seriously when it comes to betting or any predictions, really, even prospect ones. But here's the connection too. You're talking about Sal Bando, Ted Kubiak, who was the former Cleveland minor league manager in Mahoning Valley and Lake County for a time, was teammates with Sal Bando. So there's another roundabout connection to the Bandos as well. He was good. He was teammates and good friends with him on those Oakland teams. So lots of quasi.
Sal Bando and I are on the same trip. Start out in Northeast Ohio and go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yeah. So I was at GuardsFest on Saturday morning. It was a lot of fun. Ran into a couple people. Brian Shaw, not the reliever Brian Shaw.
Not the Brian Shaw.
Not the actual Clevelander Brian Shaw that's still in Cleveland and isn't going anywhere. At least I don't think he's going anywhere. But now people are going to think, oh man, the reliever Brian Shaw is coming to GuardsFest looking for work, just assuming he's a part of the team. Now is our buddy from Channel 5, Brian Shaw. I don't know if he's Channel 5 anymore. He might still be Channel 5. He also has a podcast called GuardsCast MLB with a buddy of his, and ran into him. It was good chatting with him. And then Mark, I ran into Mark, listener of the show, who kind of found us there and was just kind of talking for a little bit. He was there with his family and had a good time at GuardsFest. So thanks for that. And thanks for listening, guys, and for caring what we have to say. Sometimes I feel like, I don't know, we're just talking to ourselves some days. I'm like, is anybody really like listening? Do they know? Does anybody care what we're saying? So it was good to catch up with some people. And GuardsFest was good. Nothing really of note really happened there. I think the most notable line anybody probably has found so far is Terry Francona reaction to being named the MLB's most handsomest manager which apparently was done by AI. It wasn't a voted. I thought it was just a voted thing, but apparently it was done by AI. So that's interesting. AI is doing some interesting things these days. I'll be curious to see what happens at spring training with all the shenanigans and practical jokes. I'm sure they will play on him for winning that award. But other than that, GuardsFest was pretty good. It's just wild. Like I was looking at the roster from the night before, like who was on, what players are going to be at GuardsFest, and Jose Ramirez was not there because he had a family commitment or something in the Dominican Republic. Shane Bieber was not there because he was getting married Saturday, so he just got married. Congratulations to Shane Bieber.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah, Zach Plesac was there. I saw Bradley Zimmer was there. So those guys weren't at GuardsFest. Thankfully, Bradley Zimmer wasn't. But the only two guys that would have been on the roster in 2020, the last time they had a fan fest for Cleveland, were Emmanuel Clase and James Karinchak. Those are the only two guys that were still, on the active roster in 2020, the last time they did this, that were there on Saturday for GuardsFest. That blew my mind that it's been 3 years since they've had a fan fest, and there would have been four. If Jose and Bieber could have made it, there would have been four. But just all the young guys that were there: Will Brennan, Will Benson, Xavier Curry, Rocchio, Noel, Oscar Gonzalez, Gabriel Arias, Tyler Freeman. I'm trying to think who else was there. Josh Naylor, Bo Naylor was there. George Valera was there. Quan, obviously. It's just wild how much turnover there's been in 3 years, and it happened, I think, in a blink of an eye. And there's only two guys left from that last Fan Fest. And not to be a Debbie Downer to start the show this week, but was that Shane Bieber's last opportunity to come to a Cleveland Fan Fest?
Probably.
When January rolls around, will he be at the 2024 version?
No, while you were talking, sorry, I apologize to everyone.
That was one of my predictions.
I was pulling up the Twins trade of the day, which I hadn't seen it occurred. I was in the middle of bedtime with my daughter, so I was also pulling that up because we'll have to discuss that in segment 3. You can see some behind the curtain there. I think it will be his last one. What I thought was kind of interesting was one that apparently Steve Kwan just has been playing video games for the past few months. He lives in Chicago, and that Kwan and Straw gave a lot of credit to Kyle Hudson, who just left to be the Red Sox first base coach, for what he's done defensively. So I thought those were kind of the things that I peeled away from Zach Meisel's piece on it. If I'm being honest, that's where I got my insights into some points in there.
Yeah, Kyle Hudson called those two guys and even told them they were the reason that he got that job, and they still have not replaced Kyle Hudson. I thought last week we would see some announcements for minor league coaching assignments, but they lost Brian Sweeney. They lost who was their coach? They lost Justin Toole. Toole.
Yeah.
He's in Seattle, so those two
he
are
had
gone.
A big jump up in position.
Yeah, and then Kyle Hudson got picked off a couple weeks ago, so they haven't replaced him yet on the major league staff. So I hear that's the holdup why there's been no official announcement of minor league coaching assignments yet. But I usually within this 2 week span at the end of January, beginning of February is where they normally announce it. So I thought it'd be coming soon, but it sounds like they have to figure out what they're going to do with Kyle Hudson's position before they can announce the minor league coaching assignments. So we'll see.
Yeah, because I think they thought they were all set when they announced their last set of announcements after everyone else left. Now it's kind of back up in there, as it were. Yeah, that's GuardsFest. Do you have anything else you want to add in before we dive into these prospect ranks? And I get irate here in segment 2, and then before we talk some Twins trades for segment 3.
Well, I can tell you one prospect on the 40-man roster who was not at GuardsFest that you'll be talking about. We can give that little teaser.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
No. Sounds good. Yeah, we will talk about that and so much more. Oh, what they always tell us not to do. Never say so much more. Listen, we're getting into prospects. We're going to talk about 2 Twins trades, including an in-division trade, the rare in-division trade, on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. But first, I got to talk about our brand new sponsor. If you're a longtime fan of the show, I get excited about a new sponsor because it means that someone is stepping up who wants to partner with us. And if you heard the start, you probably know that the NFL playoffs are here, and we're excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number 1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. I know I said I was going to talk some World Baseball Classic. I got to say, I kind of like the Bengals as a underdog this weekend. Their defense has been phenomenal. They're making all the right calls, and they're 3-0 in their last 3 games against Kansas City. And who knows how healthy Patrick Mahomes is. So that might be mine in here. I know I said I was going to talk baseball, and I'm throwing you a complete not what I said. But I think I like the dogs in both of these. I like the Eagles, who are also no. Are the Bengals favored then? I think I have it wrong. Yes, the Bengals are favored. I still like them because minus 1.5. That's interesting. So I still like the Bengals even as favorites, but I think that they're a team. They're a team. That's great insight. Your thoughts?
Well, I bet against Joe Burrow and the Bengals last week. I had a good multi-leg parlay going on Josh Allen, and I'm trying to think who else last week I played. I was doing great for the first 2 quarters of that game, first half. Thought I was going to hit everything and win some good money. And then the second half, Josh Allen did not throw very well, didn't do anything very well, and it really burned me. So I probably should learn my lesson and not bet against the Bengals. Plus, like you said, who knows how healthy Patrick Mahomes' ankle is. I also, in a fantasy league I'm doing for the playoffs too, I opted against starting Jalen Hurts, and I was worried about his health, but clearly he is looking good. So Jalen Hurts looks like the Eagles look like a good play out there. Although I don't think Jalen Hurts will be as bad as Dak Prescott. How about that? That's a good bet.
So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. And let's talk about some prospects. So MLB, we've been doing this whole thing. And unsurprisingly, Cleveland did not get anyone in the top 10 first baseman or the top 10 third baseman. I did think it's interesting that Jacob Berry ahead of Cam Collier, but I think they always did in terms of some recent draft picks on the third base list. The third base list is kind of funny because it's all like Henderson gets like every category. But the one, and then, let's see, I must have already closed out here's first baseman. It's a weird list in general, just because it kind of shows how bad first base is, where it's like Matt Mervis, who the Cubs are doing everything in their power to not play, as fourth. Michael Tagalia, who's kind of struggled with the Rockies, and Brant Levine, who struggled with the Rockies, are 6 and 7. Xavier Isaac, who was a first-round pick that nobody really discussed as like he was the biggest shock of the draft. And then, hey, my buddy Nico Cavadas, who I've talked about multiple times on the show, sitting there at 10th. So just going to throw that in there. If you thought I was going to pass up a chance to talk Cavadas, you don't know me. Now time for righteous indignation. Second base list. First off, they have Edward Julian on it. He's a DH, or he's going to learn left field. There's a 0% chance that guy can hack it at second base. He is dating back to I was a big fan of his at Auburn, I want to say, and I believed in the bat. I have the tweets to back it up. We're going to talk about I mean, this guy had some really nice tools, but he hasn't improved one iota defensively. So you have that, but I mean, technically he's a second baseman, so that's fine. But Zach Gedloff, he's the third baseman all the way. He's had some games at second, but I don't know anyone who's projected him anywhere else. I understand this isn't a necessarily great list. Then Nick York, who had massive struggles last year and reached high A, hasn't even reached a double A. And Wencel Perez, who, listen, everyone thinks he's a utility guy, as far as I know. Maybe I'm misinformed. How is Angel Martinez not on that list?
I don't know. I mean, I agree with most of the list, to be honest with you. Termarr Johnson, yes. Michael Busch, yes. Jace Young, yes. Justin Foscue, who I really wanted the year he was in the draft. I know he was never going to get to Cleveland, but I like him. Connor Norby, you can't ignore. Nick Gonzalez, I don't think you can ignore. But, Zach Geloff, Nick York, who didn't have a great year, and Wencel Perez, who was 22 in high A. Yeah, I don't know. I think Angel Martinez being 20 and getting double A and hitting the way he did, for sure should have been there. He was not at GuardsFest, and he is not. Maybe that's what the Guardians knew. They knew he was not going to be on the top prospect for second base in MLB Pipeline, so they were not going to invite him to GuardsFest, although they invited guys like John Kenzie Noel and George Valera and Ryan Rocchio, who when does shortstop come out? Has that come out yet?
Comes out tomorrow, and then so we'll discuss that tomorrow. And then we're going to do all the outfielders on Thursday between the Guardians, talking about some, Guardians outfield prospects, and then talking about the list and seeing, they got a chance for 2. I think they got a chance.
What's left? 2. Shortstop and outfielder left. That's what's left.
I believe that's it. I think that's it.
Yeah. If
and
I
then
had
just
to
the
guess,
top 100. So, Monday we'll
Yeah.
talk top 100. Or not Monday, Tuesday, as it is. We record on a Monday. We'll come out on Tuesday. I don't know. This list was dumb. Like, I hate to say that, but it's like Angel Martinez has a higher ceiling than Foscue. I love Connor Norby, but again, I guess these guys are safer. I'll also be the guy. It's like, I liked Michael. If you go back to my my shadow drafts, I took Michael Busch in those. Like, I'm a believer in him. So, like, I get if you want to go for safety and ceiling, but it feels like they forgot Angel Martinez existed. Like, it feels like a situation where they forgot his name, because that's the only way this makes sense. Over, like I said, okay, if you want to say Gedloff can maybe play second, fine. I can understand that. If you want to go for safety, I can understand. Julian, it is his default position. Nick Gonzalez, I still like, even with his struggles. But over York,
They could have found a place for Angel.
Yeah, like he's no worse than 9th on this list. There is no way that he is at least not 9th. Anything that doesn't have him 9th is just like they forgot, or they're valuing like that. I don't know. Was Wenzel a big money guy? It feels like Nick York is a guy who was a mid first rounder, so that's why he's there. But I don't feel like Wenzel was that big of a name, so I don't get it.
I would say Perez was better this year. He had a big season. If you look at the numbers, he did have a big season. Yeah. I remember watching him in 2021, and I guess you could take some of that with a grain of salt because 2020, and he was still a little bit young, but he did not look good in 2021. He repeated high A in 2022.
Yeah. But then 22 in high A on a repetition. So you're like, how much can you take from that? And yeah, he was really good in double A as well in a limited sample, but 23, or did he just turn 23? He just turned 23. So it's, I don't know.
I that's a little bit old for high A. A little bit. It's not. I'd have to look if it's like right on par or a little bit older. It's definitely not young.
Angel Martinez is like 3 years younger and spent as much time in double A. So like some of that should matter. But Nick York definitely. Nick York didn't even get to double A. So it's a little ridiculous in that regard. And this team doesn't really, we did the whole show on it. It's like their top third base prospects, probably Gabby Rodriguez. I'm already blanking on who the first base prospect would be. That's how uninspiring the list kind of is.
Well, everybody, I don't
John
understand
Kenzie
this.
Noel, right?
Yeah, I don't understand it, but everybody is looking him as an outfielder. Like Fangraphs has him as an outfielder, and Pipeline apparently does too. And it's ridiculous. Like if he makes it to the majors, yeah, so does Oscar Gonzalez. A lot of guys have an arm. Manny Ramirez had a great arm. He wasn't a great defender out there either. He could stand there. It's fine. I'm just, and maybe if he continues to play, he can improve. I don't know. It's just,
I don't know. He's my whole view,
and he's not a bad first baseman. He can play first base.
And that's the thing. If he was a first baseman instead of an outfielder, I think he'd actually would have made the top first baseman list, because that first baseman list, like I love Nico Cavadis, but he was a senior who barely touched double A, and there's some issues with him. Xavier Isaac is there purely because he's a first rounder. Ivan Melendez was a second rounder who wasn't even graded. It's not like, he was graded as a first round. No, he was graded more like a second rounder. Like that's the thing. Like they have like guys, that's how bad because their first base is not a place you go to. Like, you already kind of failed at another position if you're at first base. I did think Tyler Soderstrom at 2 was interesting. And Kyle Manzardo is probably one of the better stories in the minors in the past year that not as many people maybe know about him.
He should be higher.
Yeah. I think you can make a case he's the top first base prospect in baseball.
I'm with you there. I think he's definitely underrated.
Yeah, another one of those
Speaking of
developmental
prospects,
stories.
Speaking of prospects, before we move on to talk about the Twins trades, I just saw earlier today, he put it on Twitter, Juan Hillman, former Guardians draft pick, is signing with the Washington Nationals. So good for Juan for keeping his career going. He had some struggles at the end of his time in Cleveland, and then he had Tommy John, recovered all last year, supposedly is throwing harder now, looks good, and he's going to get a shot in Washington. So I thought that was worth a mention there. A high pick. What was he? Was he a comp pick or a second round pick?
Second rounder. He was a second rounder.
Yeah. Keeping that legacy going.
Yeah. Yeah. He was like like the Gordons were essentially
right?
like, I think he lived with the Gordons his senior year.
Yeah, I think they were like he was like his advisor.
Yeah, and it was
Flash Gordon.
No, we actually back in the day. I don't know if Smoke Signals still exists somewhere in some form, but if you go and listen to the Smoke Signals Tony and I did after Juan Hillman was drafted, we had Hillman on the show. He was there like the day after he was drafted. He was very excited. Like I wrote his profile and he like tweeted at me. And then I was like, hey, you want to come on? And he's like, let me check with my advisor. And they cleared it. And he actually announced his signing on the show. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, he was going to sign. He told us right there, like, it's done. Like, it's not official, but it's done. So yeah, I always remember Juan because I was like, I think that's the first player I really interviewed. Like that was before I was in town and could like go to the minors and do stuff. So it was kind of a fun little bit of history for me. So I wish him nothing but the best. And hey, going to Washington, smart. That team is so bereft of talent. I think he's got a chance to make it to the majors. I think there were some signs that he's starting to rebound before, I believe, injuries and the like kind of slowed him up.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
athletic lefty.
He was a good dude. I think he just was searching for some consistency and just finding his stuff at the end there was kind of difficult. So I think he'll do good there. Definitely rooting for him. I tell you what, anytime Juan struggled in high A or double A or wherever it was when he was pitching in the Cleveland system, was always willing to talk and was always, accountable and, would talk about that stuff openly too. So he was, like I said, he always kept it real.
Speaking of keeping it real, we're going to come back and talk about some real moves that have occurred, as well as, you can hear me, right? My computer dropped. I just want to. So we're going to come back in a second. We're going to talk some trades and some moves in the division that affect the Cleveland Guardians on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. Okay, do you want to start big or start small? I feel like we should do small first and just kind of knock out the Michael.
This wasn't a big deal. Yeah.
No, it's kind of fascinating. It's the Twins in some regards got Brian Buxton insurance, which makes sense because he has never been healthy. He's a fantastic player, but I think everyone knows that at some point he could go on the DL. And the Twins already have a ton of outfielders because, on top of, if you look at their projection, they went out and signed Joey Gallo. They have Buxton in center. They still have Max Kepler. We'll see if they'll move him. Alex Kirilloff, Trevor Larnach. Why am I blanking on the Matt Wallner? They have many, many outfielders. But that didn't stop him from adding Michael A. Taylor, who might be more of a bench bat for them. Or, like I said, he's essentially, this feels like Byron Buxton insurance. Am I wrong there?
No, you're right. I mean, well, they already had insurance. Like, they played Gilberto Celestino out there last year. Defensively, he was fine. Like, they had defenders. So I feel like maybe it's Buxton insurance, but maybe it's more insurance for them trading one of their other outfielders. I mean, Kepler, I don't know if they'll
he's also a righty. All of those other guys we mentioned are lefties, like Larnach, Warner, Kirilloff, Kepler. So he is that.
And plus, they have Nick Gordon too.
Yeah.
So he's also, and it looks like Kirilloff is scheduled to play first base now that we're going to talk about Luis Arraez being gone. So that's going to be their first baseman. I'm sure. I don't know. I guess Jose Miranda's not going to play any first base. He did some last year, but maybe he will. But so Nick, I mean, they have a lot of guys who can man the outfield. They were devastated last year in the outfield with injuries. They were bad. I mean, Royce Lewis tore his ACL for the second straight year, I think. Kirilloff and Kepler both had injuries. Buxton got hurt. I think Nick Gordon was hurt at some point as well. Like, they were all hurt. So, it's just good. It's good depth. I mean, Michael Taylor he had that month stretch last year where he was hitting the ball good again, and people thought he was like having some sort of like late career breakout, but then he kind of fell back into who he really is, which is a all defense, nothing else player.
Yeah, I mean, just for his career, he's got an 80 runs created plus. We talk about Miles Straw. It's like we're kind of hoping Miles Straw is going to be more like an 88, 90. And Michael A. Taylor, it's like he had 2017 and this past year, the only years that he's been above 80 in terms of his run created plus. But he is, a sterling defender out there. So,
that's good depth for them. I don't know if it's necessarily a huge move other than just like you said, some depth. I think the guys they traded were interesting though. I think Evan Sisk is an interesting reliever, and Steven Cruz could be an interesting reliever. But the Royals pitching development, I don't know if I trust any of it anyway. So even no matter who they got, it may not matter because they're pitching development. Although they'll have Brian Sweeney now, so maybe that'll make some sort of a difference. I don't know.
And Evan Sisk, he might be a loogie. He's pretty much ready to go. I'm not sure if he was on the 40-man or not. I don't believe he was, which means he got through the Rule 5 draft, even though he's, a lefty who could miss some bats, who pitched in AAA. So that kind of speaks to his valuation. And then Steven Cruz, I believe, was also Rule 5 eligible and was not added. So these are two guys who got through the Rule 5 draft untouched. He throws super hard, but has no idea where it's going. So
not one the Royals forte.
No, basically a one pitch guy with no command. So and he was, MLB's list, we talked about it. It's never ideal, but just to give you an idea of where they had him, was 28th for Cruz and nothing. So yeah, it's like 4.5 million. He's got a 92 runs created plus against lefties and a 70 against righties. So he'll probably be a platoon for them, and a nice defensive replacement and solid insurance. So it's a smart move. It is weird to see an in-division trade, but I get it for the Twins and for the Royals. It is funny that supposedly a week ago they were asking for Josh Winder, the pitcher who looked really good when he was healthy, and they quickly discounted that price. They went from asking for $1.50 to getting 25 cents. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's smart for them to trade him. If this is the best they can do, then hey, it's the best they could do.
Yeah, I would not be making that trade either if I was the Twins. So that's a good call by them. So the other big one was last week, after we had already had our last show of the week, was kind of a big one. This one really stunned me. I mean, I know you had talked about it, and I feel like you had said it was Max Kepler, or I forget who else. Maybe.
No, I said Luis Arraez. I was on that.
Did you?
I said Arraez. Yeah, I said Arraez for Lopez. Now I thought it'd be like Arraez and Wallner, or I thought they'd get the left-handed outfielder they need. I didn't think that the Marlins would have to kick in prospects to get Arraez, but I did say they would be Arraez. I did.
Yeah.
From the minute Correa was signed, I talked about a Kepler deal before Correa. Once Correa signed, I said, yeah, this is going to happen. This is a lock. And that's why I had called both aspects. Again, I call wrong who would have to add a little sweetener. That part I got wrong, very wrong. But are you a little bit surprised? I know it's 3 years, and Arraez, whose name I'm probably butchering, he won the batting title, but he's had health issues. He's a bad defender. He has no power at all. There's, always that degree of the BABIP gods being unhappy. So it's 3 years of control for a good hitter. Don't get me wrong, but good hitter, suspect, defender, no power. And for 2 years of a solid 3, maybe 2 at peak starter, aren't you a little surprised that the Marlins had to chip in more?
I really don't know it. I think for the Marlins, this helps them more than it does the Twins, because the Marlins have pitching in their system that's going to replace Pablo Lopez. Yuri Perez should be up this year. They have other guys coming, and they also gave up prospects, which I don't understand either. I like Luis Arraez. I do. I think he'd be a great fit on Cleveland if they had room for him somehow. I really liked what he's been doing the last couple of years, even without the power. And he doesn't run well either, so he's really a limited player. Like you said, defensive issues. But I don't know. I'm just it's such a surprise to see that move made by a contender who I feel like Arraez was a big part of their team the last couple of years. He kind of was one of their best hitters. But I don't know. Lopez to me also is he's a third starter. at best. Like he's your. I'll frame it in a different way in a few seconds here. I got an idea, but I guess I do like it for the Twins more, just because they gave up a guy who, I mean, I guess if they really feel like Eduard Julian is gonna hit better than him and have the same defensive issues, then what's the difference, right? Like you have a guy who might be a better hitter and has the same defensive shortcomings, then why not? But they did get Jose Salas, who I think is a good prospect, and I think Byron Chourio, who, by the way, is not related to Jackson or Jason, even though they were born, him and Jason were born a day apart in Venezuela. That kind of blows my mind. Okay.
We had this debate about him, I feel like, earlier this offseason.
We did. I still haven't really
I think it was off
gotten
mic
over it,
too.
I guess. It might have been. It was off mic, you're right. Okay, so let me put you this way. If we're gonna decide if the Twins are better. Right now, Roster Resource has Pablo Lopez as the Twins' number one starter. So let me ask you this way. Shane Bieber or Pablo Lopez? Who are you taking?
Pablo Lopez, of course.
Of course. Yes, of course, Pablo Lopez.
No, I mean, I think we know the answer there. And like the one thing I'll say is the Twins have a lot of like interesting hitters. But this definitely felt like they were not willing to put up with the glove. I mean, he mostly played first base for them last year, and he was worth -10 defensive runs saved at first base. So putting him at second base so they can then put Joey Wendell at short and flip Jazz Chisholm to center field. Like this is a recipe for disaster for this Marlins infield defense.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. They may be punting defense on the infield. We'll see what they do, especially with who's playing third for them? Segura, who's probably not a third baseman. Yeah, but
who's never played there.
Yeah.
Or rarely played there.
Are you taking Tristan McKenzie or Pablo Lopez?
Tristan McKenzie.
Are you taking Cal Quantrill or Pablo Lopez?
Pablo Lopez.
Okay, so Pablo Lopez would
bet.
not start. Okay, he would not start a game 3 for Cleveland. How about Sonny Gray or Shane Bieber?
Well, no. He's
okay.
Yeah.
Tristan
he would
McKenzie
be. I'm still going with McKenzie, but then he'll beat Quantrill for me.
Okay. Joe Ryan or Shane Bieber?
Biebs.
Joe Ryan or Tristan McKenzie?
McKenzie.
Tyler Mahle or Shane Bieber?
Bieber.
Tyler Mahle or Tristan McKenzie?
Depends on the version of Tyler Mahle. This is the one time where I might be tempted to say like Tyler Mahle if it's like how he was for the first few months of the year, because we have seen both him and McKenzie be incredibly inconsistent. So I still lean McKenzie, but I also could see a situation where you go Mahle.
Tyler, okay, let's say you say McKenzie. Tyler Mahle or Cal Quantrill?
Mahle.
Okay. And Kenta Maeda and Bieber, McKenzie, Quantrill.
I'll take Cleveland's.
All three?
Yeah.
What about Aaron Savali and Kenta Maeda?
I'll go Maeda.
Okay. So we've established that that's the Twins' projected rotation right now. Only one pitcher on that list did you consider over Cleveland's number 2 option, and that was maybe a push with Tyler Mahle. Everybody else, he took Cleveland's pitching rotation the first 2 over, and 3 is where we get a push. So for the first 2 games, no matter what, I mean, if this was this is all on paper hypothetical, you're matching up the rotations. Cleveland still has the edge, the top 2. So maybe Pablo Lopez is better than Cal Quantrill, but it just seems like the Twins have a rotation filled with a bunch of number 3 starters. That's what it looks like.
What's interesting, though, is one, the entire rotation is guys they got through trades, which is really unusual. Not one homegrown guy. It's all trades. But 2, I mean, we can look at it that way, but we can also look at it like Chris Archer started a lot of games for them. Josh Winder went from like at points their number 2 starter to being their 7th guy. Derek Falvey talked about they're going to mess around with the 6-man rotation, so Bailey Ober will still get spots. But I mean, Bailey Ober was a really important pitcher for them. Like they've, we'll see how things go with health, but they needed this depth. right? I mean, Kenta Maeda was out all of last year. We'll see how he comes back from injury. That's always a shaky proposition. They needed depth. And not only did they get depth, but they improved the top of theirs. Now, is it studs? No, but it's still a big improvement overall when you look at how they've shifted things and what they project to be. So it's probably just with the way the pitching staff looks now versus what they had a year ago, it's probably like a 4 to 5 win difference. When you look at who was getting significant starts for them. So like I said, I get it. And like Pablo Lopez isn't the most exciting guy. We talked about, like, I'd have rather traded for Luzardo if Cleveland was going to trade for anyone from them. But is he a solid guy? That's what he is. And that's what the Twins kind of need. So I think, and then when they get 2 prospects as well for a guy who would have been, they like Kirilloff. They want to give him at bats. Like they had the capital and, they go out and recoup some prospects. And, when they traded Urshela, they added some interest. They've been smart about the fringes. They've been very smart with the fringes of the roster. And, I'll be curious to see how this team does. It makes the Marlins better offensively. Who knows what they're going to be like defensively, but it's a smart move because of their depth. They desperately need power, though, so they still should be out there trying to land power somehow, some way. But the Twins desperately needed pitching depth, so I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, and that's how these trades should be. They should be win-win. The Twins, I will say, that is probably where the Twins are better this year than they were a year ago, is they do have way more depth. And they needed that. Obviously, all the injuries they had last year on the position player side and the pitching side, they needed more depth. So if they do have any issues like they did a year ago, then they might be in better position to sustain that. But you are, like we talked about before, you are banking on health. Like you're banking on all these guys being healthy and being better than they were a year ago. I mean, what do they say about, especially for pitchers, what's the best predictor of an injury? It's prior injury. So there are no guarantees, but they are better equipped to deal with it now, I guess.
We'll save it for segment 3, segment 3. We'll save it for a little bit of post game talk. But I got some numbers pulled up on like who started games for this Twins team that will kind of blow your hair back. It was, like I said, it was a dire situation for them, and this was I think it was a smart move, and that's why I was like, it's just a matter of time, and it happened. So you can join us in the after show. And we're going to talk maybe a little bit more about this. But I've been Jeff Ellis for Justin. I want to thank everyone for listening, rating, and reviewing. Downloading it helps. It's awesome that you had some fun interactions at GuardsFest. Thank you to those gentlemen. And go Guardians, go. So here's the fun game. Do you know who was number 1 on the Twins in starts a year ago?
Number 1?
Number 1.
Joe Ryan.
No, he was number 2.
Okay. Number 1. Sonny Gray. Was he healthy enough for to be the top?
He was 4th.
Wow. Okay. Does this player still pitch for them? Is he still in their system?
No.
I don't know.
Dylan Bundy had 29 starts and a negative 0.3 WAR.
Oh, he had no wonder.
He had the most starts and had a negative WAR. Who had the 3rd most starts for the Twins?
You said that Joe Ryan was 2 and Sonny Gray was 4. Does this pitcher also still pitch for them?
No.
Was it Chris Archer?
It was Chris Archer, who, by the way, had a 0 WAR. So they're number 1 and number 3 combined for a negative 0.2 WAR. So Joe Ryan, do you know who was 5th in starts?
Was it Bailey Ober?
No, he was 7th.
Louis Varland?
He was 8th. Tied for 8th with Chris Paddock. Devin Smeltzer.
Who's gone. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So wow. That's just how bad their pitching was. Like, you get down to it, it's like Chichi Gonzalez had 2 starts for them. Aaron Sanchez had 3 starts for them. Cole Sands had 3 starts for them. Those 3 guys there, that's 8 starts for like players who shouldn't pitch in the big leagues. Like, let's be honest, with Sanchez, and Chichi, those are not big league guys. Now you're talking like, I think Devin Smeltzer might still be with them, or they let him go.
I think they let him go. I think he's in their system now. He's not listed on there on roster resource.
Okay. So if they let him go, but you're looking at a case where like Josh Winder was 6th in starts. He's now like their 7th starter. Luis Arraez is like their 8th. We'll see if Chris Paddock can come back. Simeon Woods Richardson. He had 1 start a year ago. He'll probably get some opportunities. But Bundy, Archer, and Smeltzer were 1, 3, and 5. 2 of them brought no value. And instead, now you got a healthy Kenta Maeda. You have Pablo Lopez, Pablo Lopez is 6 innings and done. He's going to miss some bats. He's not a guy who you can really push to extend. And they do have some questions in that bullpen that still aren't fixed. But a full year of Tyler Mahle, Pablo Lopez, a healthy Kenta Maeda, Simeon Woods Richardson, like this is a massive, massive improvement. Like this might be a bigger improvement than like Carlos Correa coming back.
That's a good point. I like Joe Ryan a lot too. Joe Ryan's a really good pitcher. I think he's going to have a great year for them. So yeah, the pitching is going to be interesting. You're right. I'll be curious to see a lot of these matchups with the Guardians and the Twins. I think when we talk about pitching prospects in the system, we'll have to talk about who will actually pitch for the Guardians this year by the end of the year. Cause I think it's, I mean, we matched it up and we like the Guardians top 2 over anybody in the Twins rotation. But if you're talking depth wise, clearly I think we've established the Twins depth might be a little better right now. Cause even you're talking about Plesac and Savali and Quantrill and the guys at the bottom of the rotation, Connor Pilkington as your 6th starter, Hunter Gaddis and Xavier Curry as possibly your 7-8, and you've got Joey Cantillo who can make a start for you. You don't have any experience from that depth, right? Like you have nothing, and your 4 and 5 guys are extremely suspect in terms of health and consistency, right? So the Twins, because of what they went through last year, like you talked about, Bailey Ober was good for them last year. He is maybe their 6th starter. They maybe get Chris Paddock back. We'll see what he can do. Josh Winder got some valuable experience last year. He's their 7th guy. Those guys, I mean, I know, like you said, not great. They had to pitch last year. They didn't do great, but they're still good pitchers, and they're prospects who got valuable time. And I might like them more than Curry, Gaddis, and Pilkington and Cantillo as options this year. The real question is going to be for Cleveland is if they can find a way to get Allen or Espino or Williams or Bybee to the big leagues, because that's where you're going to be able to build some depth. But those guys aren't on the 40. There's no room for them. Whereas the Twins have a ton of pitching on their 40. They have their current 5 right now. They're set to have in the rotation. They also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They have 9 pitchers on their 40-man roster. They added Jordan Balazovic, AJ Alexi, they have Ronnie Henriquez, and I don't know who Brett Hedrick is. He's on there. Matt Centinino, who apparently pitched, or Cantinero, who pitched for them last year. Like they have a lot of options. Though, right? On I think it says he's injured. I don't know what's wrong with him, but they have
TJ situation potentially,
maybe. And Louis Varland pitched for them last year, and he was okay. He had a good year in the minors. So, they have experienced options where Cleveland does not have experienced options. So that's and their best options are unfortunately not on the 40.
Yeah, and it's I don't think the Twins are done either. If I'm being honest, like adding Taylor, I think is kind of sets them up to possibly move on from a Max Kepler if they can find the right deal, if they can get some bullpen help and flip an outfielder and get a reliever. I think they'd still like to see some of these other guys because Kepler's a free agent in a year. Polanco, I believe, is a free agent in a year. Like they have some guys who are kind of nearing the end of their contracts that behoove them to kind of get some of these other, because they got good depth. Like Trevor Larnach is an interesting player. Matt Wallner, interesting players. These are high picks that are just more of their depth, and it's going to be the one thing with this Twins team. I desperately need to add relief help. Like that is totally where I see some. We saw this pen fold time and time again against the Guardians. And it's the same guys: Griffin Jacks, Caleb Theobar, Emilio Pagan, Jorge Alcea. They went and made that trade last year for Jorge Lopez. We'll have to see what he is, but that is a pen that has a lot of issues. And they also have like every single former interesting catcher. I was just looking at their minors, like Tony Walters, Chance Sisco, Grayson Grenier, like just collecting catchers on non-roster invites. But even I haven't even checked it on Aaron Sabato in a while. I assume it hasn't gone well for him, but he's a non-roster invite who was another former first-round pick. And they've got a lot of picks. They're going to start getting opportunities, I feel like. So I'm curious to see. I don't feel like they're done. I feel like if they can, make a trade with a lesser team and get someone, like they would be the perfect team to go trade for David Bednar. Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
They have the prospect capital to get it done, and he would be the guy they desperately need at the back of their pen. So I think that, it's going to be interesting to see, what they do, because I don't think they're done at all at this point in time. Yeah.
And they just added prospects. Like you said, they had prospect capital. They just added prospects in that deal. So yeah.
They added prospects they traded prospects for Taylor, but nothing big. Their prospects, their powder is better than it was a week ago. And I thought it was kind of interesting. And finally, I remember what I want to say was, I saw The Athletic kind of comparing Lopez to Jordan Montgomery, who is more of a ground ball guy, doesn't have anywhere near the K rate. But if they're similar values, remember, it's kind of shocking to go back and think that Jordan Montgomery was Harrison Bader was the cost. So it's almost like, I think we got to point out to some degree, like, for as much as we think everyone still wants to put together a Plesac or Savale deal, like, I think it's worth keeping in mind that like Jordan Montgomery is probably better than those two. And all they got was Harrison Bader, and like this Lopez deal also kind of resets the pitching market, where again, Arraez is a good player, but a very flawed player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But hey, he kills the Guardians, so that's probably a net win right there with him leaving the division. Now we just need the Braves to sign Elvis, and we'll be good.
Yeah, keep everybody out of the Central that kills them. Whit Merrifield's in Toronto, so that helps a little bit.
Yeah, it's I don't know, they're a fascinating team. I think, I don't know, like their depth could be the huge separator. And then Miami is, I don't, like I said, I don't dislike this trade. I think, they got better, they have depth, but that is such a weird team. I don't
think it's going to go well for them.
Their
pitching is actually really good.
I mean, they got just so many issues, and it's, well,
I mean, they're not winning that division anyway, because the Braves and the Mets and the Phillies are all super teams right now. So they're not sniffing the playoffs this year. Like they're not even. If I'm looking at the sad part is I really like the Marlins roster. Like in a vacuum, I like Luis Arraez as a player. I like Jazz Chisholm as a player. Okay, I guess the rest of their lineup is pretty yucky. You're right. Never mind. They're pitching, obviously.
I like Garrett Cooper. I like Cooper. Did you mention him?
He's fine. Alcantara, Luzardo, Cabrera, Trevor. I still like Trevor Rogers. I know he was not good last year, but I still think there's enough there. They have our buddy Nick N right now. I don't know. They won't have Max Meyer back this year.
By the way, I don't know. Did you see that Nick Enright made the Marlins top 30 prospect list? Not a knock on Nick. We both really like him, but like for a reliever with non-explosive stuff to make a top 30 kind of speaks to the depth issues in those minors as well.
Yeah, I think he is going to make multiple top 30s.
Yeah, I think he'll make them all, which again is not a knock on him, but it is interesting that Cleveland couldn't find space for him. And we understand why. It's not like we're denigrating Cleveland for it, but he's going to be that high in the Marlins system. So that is a system that lacks depth. It's had a lot of high picks, and that's why I think like that front office might make some really foolish maneuvers before the season is done. Because I think if they finish anywhere near what they finished last year, even though it'll be a black eye to fire the first female GM, I think they will end up doing it if that team is not
Yeah, I mean,
they haven't been good.
No, and they really can't compete in that division right now. I'm sorry. I know, like,
their free agent contracts. Like, I mean, I said from the beginning those were awful. I think anyone with half of any baseball intelligence knew that you were signing the wrong guy. It's been weird reactionary moves for that organization for about a decade.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess we can look at them now as, are they a team that's going to be a seller at the deadline?
No, they can't be.
You don't think they can be?
No, if the GM will lose their job if they end up with like a worse record. They have to be at least close to 500, I think, to keep her job.
I mean, I guess their one saving grace then is they don't have to play the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies 19 times. But look, that you still got to play those guys at some point. You still got to play the Brewers, the Cardinals, who are good. The Dodgers and the Padres will be good, and dude, the NL is just really it's really just the NL East. And then it's really good, and then the NL Central's a 2-team race, and then the NL West is a 2-team race.
Oh, I kind of, at least the Giants will be decent, and the Diamondbacks are fun. But yeah, it's
NL's
it's definitely a lot
NL
weaker.
Is really, yeah, I mean the entire AL East except for the Red Sox is competing. I guess you could say the same thing with the AL Central. It's maybe 2.5 teams. I don't know. I guess we'll say the White Sox are going to compete again.
Yeah.
And the West is a 3-team race. I think the
Red Sox are like the Giants, but we're saying the Giants are interesting in the NL, but it's like the Giants and Red Sox are not all that far separated. That's how, yeah. So that's it. And like I said, it's when people are up against it, that is, I'll be curious to see what they trade off this year. Like,
yeah, I guess keep an eye on them because I mean they have tradable pieces for sure. They have players that Cleveland might want for sure, but especially in the pitching side of things. But yeah, we'll see.
No, I'm fascinated, and I'm glad Joey Wendell looks like he's going to get a chance to play any position. He's a plus defender at third base. I think it's interesting to shift him to short full time, but hey, they're just doing some interesting things in general in Miami. Tomorrow's show, like I said, we're going to talk some shortstops because that is the MLB list. We'll maybe get into some Ohio baseball stats. As I mentioned, I already did the research on them. So comment below if you have some thoughts on who the 6 MLB players who were born and went to high school in Northeast Ohio are. And yeah, that'll be our comment of the day. Thank you all for listening, rating and reviewing, downloading daily. It helps. Watching on YouTube, letting some ads play. We appreciate that as well. And you know what? I don't think I said the thing at the end of the audio podcast, but just a mess today, I guess. But go Guardians, go.